The DKB Ice Canal in Altenberg, Germany is the venue for the 6th FIBT Wiesmann World Cup of the Men's Skeleton Tour. The first race back after the Christmas New Year break, and the weather, well, could be a little better. The company, though, is exquisite. I'm Martin Haven, and I'm delighted to welcome into the booth alongside me top US slider Noel Piker-Space. Noel, a tiny break at the moment in the weather, but it does look as though it may be almost as wet for the men's race as it was for yours yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday the rain was just pouring down. Right now we have a little bit of a break, and we're hoping that it holds out as long as possible because it really makes a difference on the ice.
Well, this Altenberg track is a real driver's playground, isn't it? It's a tough track to get the best out of.
It is. There are a lot of places that you can flip, a lot of places where you need to use your toes. Right here we're going to get a little view of what it is that we do down the track. So the start is so critical. It's a very, very long start. You're going to see some athletes pushing and probably getting on their sleds a little too early, which can really, really affect your start time. Coming out of curve 1, you pick up your speed here. So anytime you tap that wall, you're going to be losing it. Now going into curve 3, you're seeing curve 3 come up, and this is a really critical curve because you need to get into this curve right here. You need to get in really early. You'll be seeing athletes dropping their toes, and this is really probably the most critical point in the track, one of them anyway. Athletes oftentimes flip onto their back right there coming into that 5th curve. Here's 6, 7, 8. This is what we call a labyrinth. Every track it actually is necessary for a track to have a labyrinth. Curve 9, you're going to see a long straightaway coming out of here, and this is where it sets you up for Kreisel. That's German for circle. It's a full 360 degrees. It's very easy to get lost in here. Athletes use their toes. Sometimes you'll see them using their knees, but it's very difficult to drive. Higher pressures and faster speeds oftentimes require us to use our toes. Curve 12 and coming up to 13. This is another high pressure curve coming around, and you want to get set up nice and early on that left hand wall into 14. And the straightaway, this is uphill. You can kill your speed right here, especially with this rain coming down. If you go in sideways in any of these curves, you will be done. You're toast. Your run is over. And here's the finish curve right there, and that's your run.
Well, listen, you know, it's going to take a minute to get down, but it's a pretty exhilarating minute. This is a quick track, lots of pressure as well in the corners.
Yes, there's a lot of pressure. It's actually not the quickest track in the world. It's kind of in the middle, but every curve counts, and your speed. That's what this sport is about. It's about speed, picking up speed all the way down.
Our World Cup leader is Martin Stukurs of Latvia. His perfect record this season was broken in Whistler. He is now on a streak of 2 wins, but he has won 17 of the last 21 times he's been on an ice track. And of those other missed opportunities, it's either been a silver medal or one single solitary 6th place, which was in Koenigsee last year, where he nearly crashed battling for the lead. Well, there's one of the new names to conjure with this weekend. Brad Stewart from the USA makes his World Cup debut. Noel, you did that again for the 3rd time, coming back after retirement at the beginning of the season. What's it like, though, for a rookie? You know, he's in the big show for the first time, the lights, the cameras, and all of the hubbub of being in the World Cup.
He is, and it's nerve-wracking, but it is the same track. You're the same athlete, and so hopefully it's all about your mentality. If you go into a race and feel like it's completely different, you're going to blow it from the start. But if you can go into it knowing your stuff and knowing what you need to do to get down, it's just one curve at a time, and if he can put it together, he'll do great.
Well, listen, we say so much about this sport being about the runners, about the technology and so on. Of course, the biggest thing is the grey matter. It's what happens between the ears, and that's exactly what you're focused on now. Well, we've got 23 sleds in our start order today. As ever, it will be cut to a field of 20 for the 2nd heat, and it'll be the total time taken in both runs that will decide your position. Great Britain's Kristen Bromley is the first out of the random start draw for the top 10. Martin Stukurs of Latvia, our World Cup leader, goes 2nd. He won this race last year, and Brad Stewart starts in position 20. Behind him, 3 sliders will all be trying to push somebody out of the race so they can get in. And the view up to the top there shows that the misting drizzle is still with us.
Yeah, that rain, that mist, even a mist, will definitely affect the run. It'll be nice to go off first, but of course they have to crank up that refrigeration. That's how every track, except for St. Moritz, of course, is iced over, and so they'll crank it up. You'll see frost on the track, and the push is just so critical. Let's see what he has.
Little wobble there at the end of the start grooves. Now that's not induced by the slider. That's where he's been pushed out, and we'll probably see some sliders trying to use the other groove to avoid that problem. Kristen Bromley gets away with a 5.42. He's got an injured back, and so he's definitely not at his best. He said anything under 550 will be about acceptable.
And you know, with all this rain coming down, it was downpouring last night, so for the track crew to keep up the ice and to keep up the conditions, you'll be seeing a couple little bumps here and there. This track is known to just have very, very smooth ice. Ooh, that was a little high. Let's see how he comes out. He corrected it on that last pressure, but that's going to cost him a little bit on his speed, I think.
103.4 kilometers an hour is 64.3 miles an hour. You can hear a little bit of scratching and scraping from his chin piece of his helmet hitting the ice.
Let's see if he corrected. Yeah, that's not a bad time. Let's see, 59.96. That's going to be the time to beat going into Martin's Dukers. We'll see what he can lay down.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, at the moment, Kristen has set the benchmark. Well, in 2008, this was the scene of the end of Kristen's greatest season as a slider. He won the overall World Cup, he won the European Championship, he won the World Championship. He completed the Holy Grail. He won all titles.
Quite impressive. Look at that straightaway. This is going right into that Kreisel, into the 360, and if you can nail that, that's where you pick up so much speed. You can see he gets a little high here in the second pressure, right there, close to the wood. Ooh, he kind of missed that steer. We'll see how that costs him. You know, it's really hard to be the first athlete. You don't know where your times compare with everybody else.
Wincing a little from the back pain as well. He said, maybe bent over's not so bad. It's when you straighten up to try and get on the sled, that's when it's really going to hurt. Well, he leads for the moment. And Martin Stukos of Latvia, our World Cup points leader, last year's World Cup champion and world champion and European champion.
You'll see one of the fastest starts right here, getting off that block. This is a very, very long start.
He's got very, very long legs to deal with it as well. Track record 4.9 of 5.09. That's very good in these conditions.
Very, very good. Coming out of 2 into that straight, you can see him trying to head position where he wants to go. Curve 4, let's see his toes. His toes are going to come out. The pressures are a little bit off, so it's really difficult to steer with your knees in that curve specifically. And if you can get that curve, if you can get it right and come out straight, you'll gain a lot of speed down the track.
Well, listen, you're probably a good person to ask, how is it that he is so much better than everybody else so often?
I've heard him with some interviews, and you know, he really just puts it together. He picks it apart and he studies it, and he's meticulous in his sliding. You can see even times when he's won, if he's had a bad run, he'll come off and he's shaking his head because he's that much into perfection. He really wants to perfect his talent and his ability to slide. So he really knows what he needs to work on, and he fixes his weaknesses to become his strengths.
Top speed through all the speed traps, and look at that.
58.96.
Yeah, 58.96, 1 second exactly quicker than Kristen Bromley. Now the track record, Alex Krökel set that December 2010. That's a 56.6 seconds. We're not going to get anywhere close to that. And actually, one of the things that fans might watch on the next run is how little shine there is from the ice.
Yeah, it's frosted over, and actually that's not too bad of a thing. Yesterday you could see how much water was on the track. It was just downpouring. We were going into skids and hydroplaning, going sideways. That means turning the sled at an angle. You always want your runners. Ooh, that was a little bit rough on the exit there. He maintained it though. He kept it together. He kept his form. He kept his feet in tight. And as long as your runners, like I said, are going straight, that's going to get you some speed.
Well, he's got the ability to deal with hazards and mistakes without any real problems. That's one of his great strengths. Now here is young Christopher Grother of Germany. He's the new junior world champion. Took that title in December ahead of his teammate Alex Jung and Canada's Barrett Martineau. That was in Eagles, Austria. And of course, that'll be our last World Cup race before the World Championships, but not our last of the season, because uniquely, after the World Championships in St. Moritz, the final World Cup event will be the Olympic tryout event in Sochi, Russia, which everybody is looking forward to, I think, almost as much as going to the Mecca that is St. Moritz.
Now you can see he's pushing on the opposite side. He ran on the left side with his runner in that right groove. That's really dangerous. It's very easy to make your sled come out of that groove, and it can cost you a whole run. So he took a risk right there. But it actually worked out really nicely. Okay, curve 4, this is the one, and let's see. I'm not sure if this is his home track or not, but he really has that down. Curve 4, he came out really nicely there.
Well, of course, the Germans have so much experience of their own tracks. His home track is Oberhof, which is even tighter and twistier here, but it's a track that teaches you the value of steering.
He controlled those pressures in Kreisel coming out. A little bit of a flop off, but his runners are straight. He's losing a little bit.
108 in, 103 out. Now 110 at the bottom, 110.2. He's not far away from Dukas in terms of top speed.
And across the finish line.
And he comes in second place, pretty much halfway between the two sliders that are run so far. 6/10 behind Martin Dukas, 4/10 in front of Kristen Bromley.
You know, the places where you really can gain speed here are curve 4 and curve 10.
Well, yesterday in the women's race, it was proper whitewater rafting, wasn't
yes,
it? Today,
it was.
at least, it's relatively dry.
Here's his start.
Far.
You can see him on the left side. You can see him pumping his arm, you know, kicking it out as hard as he can, going as long as he can. But like I said, that's a little difficult. You can see his runners popping up, and it's close to popping out. That groove is not setting him up very nicely, is it?
Not too good. Well, 20 years old, he's already the junior world champion. This kid has got a long time sliding in front of him.
Yeah, if the rain begins to pour, we will see problems with that right groove right there. You can see it kind of shifting to the right, shifting to the left. It's not very straight. We'll see what happens.
John Montgomery was in a commentary booth yesterday for the women's race, and he noticed that the German girls all had a little karate kick, he called it, going into corner 4. I just said to him, he said yesterday, I might think about trying now. I said, are you going to give it a go? He said, nah, maybe I'm not going to bust that move out in the race.
Well, I guess we'll see, huh?
Yeah, we'll see. I said, what? I said, if you scorpion in race 1, we'll look for it in race 2. Let's see what he's got. 5:26 getaway.
Nice exit out of curve 1. Ooh, setting up a little bit late into curve 2. Let's see how, yep, you can see him coming out a little bit late, having to fight to get back early into 3. And here's where curve 4 is that we were talking about. That was a little bit of a karate kick there. He came out nice and clean. That's great. That'll definitely help his speed.
Well, his own design of sled is now up to Mark 4 spec, so he's now had half a dozen trips on this track on the new sled.
That's not fast. That's not fast. He came out on that right wall. He had to really crank it around. He's going to lose speed. You will definitely see his speed drop out here. And that hit on the left-hand wall is not going to help him. Down by 65 hundredths.
He's now lying in 3rd place, still ahead of Kristen Bromley, but there's lots of work going on with the legs.
There is a lot of work. This is the Olympic champion, 2010. I know he's testing some equipment. He's trying to find a sled that he really likes. He's helping to design it and build it, and he says he's on round 4 right now with his sled design.
Well, a 60-second slide is not going to result in a cheerful John Montgomery.
No, that was very, very messy for him. Usually he can pull it together, and you can see him coming out of curve 14, and he hit that left wall, and that just kills your speed as well.
Well, he's slid on a different sled almost every race this year because he broke his own in Park City.
Here we are in curve 11, getting a little bit of height. You'll feel a lot of pressure coming in here. In the past, we've had to use toes. Oh, look at that. Too early. That knocked him down. You can see his feet coming apart. You want to keep your form, and you want your runners to go straight. Yeah, that definitely did not help his speed.
Well, the helmet isn't flying across the finish dock, but it's as close to it. Let's see what he can produce in the second heat. A chance to correct some of those errors. Next up for the USA is John Daly.
He's really been struggling here this week. This is by far his least favorite track in the world. Every track in the world is different. Different lengths, different speeds, different curves. They all go in different directions, so you have to take time to memorize each one and get a feel for it. And he really, really dislikes this track.
Well, you know, it should work for him. His home track is Lake Placid, and this has got to be one of the most similar tracks.
And he has a decent push. He has a decent push. 2,700s off of Dukers right now. I know he has a trouble. You can see his head is kind of high right there.
Yeah. And that brings the shoulders up as well, and all of that presents a bigger profile to the air. So you're creating a parachute effect, and 4 did not go well for him.
No, you can see his leg come across his body. We call that a scorpion. When your body gets twisted, you come off and you hit early. This is not a good run.
Well, he is the first, but he won't be the last scorpion we see in turn 4. 105 kilometers now, 3 clicks down into the Kreisel. barely have 100. He doesn't even have 100 on the way out. So that's how much those 3 pressures trying to steer them out has cost him.
Yeah, you can tell when you're not there mentally, it really shows in your performance. It really shows in your sliding ability, and he just hasn't really been able to pull it together here mentally. You can see down by 2.3 seconds. That's really rough for him, and I think he's just gonna be happy to be getting back on a track that he loves.
He'll be happy if he makes the second heat after that run.
We'll see.
3 sliders won't. He may be among them.
He might, yeah.
And you know what? Despite all of that drama and being 2 seconds down, he was still quicker at the bottom of the track in terms of top speed than John Montgomery.
Wow. That's quite impressive, yeah. And that goes to show you, I mean, it's really hard to see. Here we are. Let's see. Oh, coming out of curve 4, you're going to see him coming up high on the exit, which brings him in too early to 5. His left leg just comes across his body. That's what we call the scorpion, and that does not help out your speed. And here he is again. Exit Kreisel coming up high on that exit.
Tough times. Zach Lund carrying the sled and trying to lift the spirits a little. John will be pleased to see Altenberg in his rearview mirror, which is kind of a shame because, you know, this is a tough track to tame. He's going to have to come back and give it another crack next year.
Here's Frank Rommel. He's going to give Dukers a run for his money. He's been training really well. He's always had great performances here. Let's see what he can throw down, see how he can challenge Martins. See the sled and the runners on the bottom. That's every track you need different runners depending on the ice conditions. Right now it's been really difficult to choose what kind of runners to have because of the rain and the frost.
It is still drifting, misty drizzle, so the track is frosting up. Well, listen, a 5:37 getaway. That's a 10th slower than John Montgomery. That's 3/10 slower than Martins Dukers. So he's got a lot of work to do. He was only 4th here last year. Didn't get on the podium either.
Excellent exit up top. This is looking like a really good run. You can see it's nice and clean. His feet are together. Oh, down by 63 hundredths.
Well, what about the runners? You know, you want to choose, if it's frosty, a very narrow runner, but if it's wet, you want to have a fatter runner because the ice is going to be soft, so maybe he's just gone with one for rain.
With a different kind of runner, exactly. It can really come down to that on frosty conditions and in the rain. If it's really cold ice, you're going to want a sharper runner. And when we say a sharper runner, we have little spines on the bottom of the bottom half of our runner that are able to stick into the ice when we drive. That's the portion that's being pushed into the ice to help us to steer. There's different kinds of runners. The Steele's down by 55 hundredths with a pretty good run. It's going to be really difficult to beat Martins.
And again, you know, you look at that run and it was smooth, it flowed. If you took the graphics off the screen, you'd be going, yeah, he's going to be right in there, and yet he's nearly, well, he's over half a second behind the leader.
Yeah, you can see that comes down to the start as well, though. Where, you know, he was 29 hundredths down at the start. For him to only be down by 55 hundredths, that's actually quite impressive on this track. You can see him kind of coming across into Kreisel, getting in a nice entrance, keeping it low. You don't want to get too high. It's fine to loop, actually. You don't want to be completely straight or else you're overdriving it. And if you're overdriving it, you're cutting ice, and that's going to be slow.
Down at the bottom of the track, top speed so far, 112.3 kilometers an hour. Look at Martins Dukers, 110.8. So he was closing that margin a little. But again, as we always say with Marion Thies, needs a few more meters of ice to be able to get that top speed to work.
That's right.
Next up, Faceman, Eric Nielsen. Oh, hang on, beg your pardon. No Eric Nielsen then. So we're going straight to John Fairbairn. I saw Eric warming up earlier, but he has not started. So unless, hang on a minute, this is Eric Nielsen. Yes, it is. The start graphic was wrong. It is Eric Nielsen, so yeah, that's okay.
It's a nice entry into 3. Oh, you can see him come off a little bit late in there. And he's really driving it hard. Oh, that was very bad, very bad. You can see the trouble started actually in curve 3. He came off late, which didn't get him a good entry into curve 4. He wasn't able to drive it and wasn't able to contain it. It set him up early into 5. That's really going to kill his speed.
Second time ever on this track. Last year was his rookie season. He finished 13th.
Very high.
Waving in the Kreisel.
He contained it on that last pressure, but his speed just isn't there.
Wow. Yeah, that's a pretty wild ride.
14, let's see if he has it straight. Runners are straight. That'll at least help a little bit, but he's down by 1.43 seconds.
Well, we're seeing some massive, massive gaps, aren't we, in the runs?
1.8 seconds. Wow.
Yeah, Kelly Forbes, not much to say about that, except at least you have another run, maybe.
That's right, maybe. Maybe
yeah.
You're never guaranteed. And in a sport where it's based off of 100th of a second, I mean, yesterday in the women's race, you know, Katie Eulander took second by 1/100th of a second to Marion Thies.
Yeah.
And, you know, to see them down by over a second and a half, this is unheard of in our sport, really.
And, you know, so much of that is because of the variable track conditions, I'm sure, you know.
Here he is coming off of curve 4. Early into curve 5, you see that leg come up. He can't control it. At least he kept his shoulders pinned. If you don't keep your shoulders pinned down, his whole body could have flipped over and he could have been on his back. Here's 11-12, the same thing, way too early. Look at that. You can see space between the runner and the ice.
And between the seat and the body.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, that's where the brute strength of the upper arms holds you in.
Yes.
You know, you've got to cling on, otherwise you'll get flung off. Well, after Eric Nielsen, next up is John Fairbairn, the third of our Canadian athletes. John Montgomery lies 5th at the moment. Eric Nielsen 6th. What about Johnny Fairbairn? What can he produce?
You can see on the bottom of their feet, you can see spikes. They're similar to track and field spikes, is what I like to say, but it's a brush. It's hundreds of little pins and needles to help us sprint on the ice so that we can get into control. 1/16th of an inch.
Now you look at, you know, athletes sprinting with those. Can you imagine what it'd be like with track and field spikes, with like 7 spikes on the ball of your foot? There must have been a lot of slipping and sliding in those days.
Yeah, there was. I was back in those days, so.
Oh, you can't possibly. I'm sure your dad told you about it.
That was a great exit of curve 4. That's critical for speed. Still down by 75 hundredths. Typically, you'll see every 100th at the top counts so much. If you're down by 100th at the top of the track from your push, you're going to be down by 200ths at the bottom. So to be off by, he was off by, what, 3/10 at the top? At the bottom, we're going to see that even a larger margin. You can see 1.15, and this really isn't a bad run for him. He's actually doing a great job keeping it together. Runners, oh, right there. That's
hey,
very
first
easy
time
to
in
do.
the booth this year, the curse of the commentator, you've already got the skills.
Oh, there it is, 1.5.
Decent speed at the bottom, 107, but the fastest have been
112. 112.
Yeah.
By Rommel. And Dukers had 110.
1.58, he falls pretty much evenly between John Montgomery, 1.1 off, and Eric Nielsen, 1.8 off the lead. There are some massive gaps in this field, and we've got 7 athletes, the top 7, covered by 1.8 seconds, not 1800ths, which would be a little bit more traditional.
You can see him going into curve 14, it looks like right here, coming out of the straight, and he hits that left wall. He came out too early, and then you can see his runners are not straight. They're going sideways. That just kills your speed.
Well, normally when you hit the wall, you get the bruise on the shoulder. That's going to be a bruise on the hip. Thomas Ducour's the race leader by ½ second from the best of the Germans, Martin Ducour's even. Thomas Ducour's comes up next. Now, he took the silver medal last year, so let's see what he can produce.
You know, there still is a mist here, and yesterday we saw anyway, as the time went on, the ice kept getting slower and slower, so we're going to see how close Thomas can come to his brother if he could possibly beat him.
You know, that's a valid point. Martin's coming out second, may have had some of the best ice that there was. This might be a really good indicator. 5:29 again, not hanging around at the start, but still 2/10 slow. Martin's pulled off an astonishing start.
You very rarely see these Dukers brothers make any mistakes on the track. As I was mentioning before about Martins, they're just perfectionists. They try to pick it apart and put it together. Every single curve, they have to be perfect. This is looking like a really, really good run. Coming out 9, that straightaway is critical for speed. Set you up nice and early, and he's still down by 56 hundredths to his brother.
Again, I'm thinking that Martins has again achieved that plane above everybody else. So what we're not measuring him against is anyone else. He was up to 3rd out of corner 5, but now he's back down to 4th spot. So he's behind Frank Rommel and Christopher Groothair.
It's a good chance that the track is getting slower. I mean, just coming off of these times, 86 hundredths off his brother, 4th position, and that was an excellent run.
They're not that much different. They really are not.
The track is definitely slowing down.
Yeah. Which leaves everybody else with a bit of a problem, because coming second out the start shed, Martin Ducours really didn't have any disadvantage at all.
Yeah, Marion Thies was off 10th yesterday, and she had the 3rd fastest run yesterday. And then she went, you know, 3rd again, 3rd to last, and she finished 3rd as well. Here's the start. You can see him pushing off hard. This start is so complicated to get. It's really, really long, and so it's really hard to know when to get on your sled. You can see wood on the side, and that's how I judge when to jump on my sled. Most people jump on too early.
Yeah.
Look at those start speeds after curve 1.
Martin's, you know, he's 2/10 quicker at the start than anybody, and he's got so much momentum as well. You know, he's a big, heavy guy like his brother. He's pushing a very light sled like his brother, and so he gets a lot of muscle into it.
There's the winner, Marion Thies.
There in the black hat. And she is watching Alexander Krökel on the podium last year, bronze medal in Altenberg.
He's been training really well all week as well.
Well, his best result came on home ice in Koenigsee, Bavaria, the week after Altenberg last year, and that's where we head next week. And it'll be home too for the girl in the white Red Bull hat, for Anja Huber. In fact, John Morgan, the TV crew, and I will be staying in Bischofswiesen, which is her hometown.
Oh, that start groove is just killing him too.
5:24, that's another good start.
You know, that might also be attributing to their start times as well. When you come out of that groove, it's popping and pulling and kind of setting them up poorly for curve 1, and it's getting worse with this rain coming down. Great exit out of curve 4 to 5. Coming into the labyrinth, 6. 2900s down. Ooh, that was a little bit too early. Every little mistake. We try to put ourselves within an inch of where we want to be on every single curve in every single corner of every single track. And if we're off by an inch or 2, that can really set us up poorly for the next curve.
He lost a lot of speed in the Kreisel.
He's maintaining, though. He's gaining. Yeah. I mean, 2800s down. That's not bad.
That's really rocking. He's halfway between Frank Rommel and the race leader, Martin Stuckers. Decent speed at the bottom, same as Stuckers.
2500s.
Very good. There you go, game on. Now we may have a race on our hands.
Especially coming into the second run, where the ice conditions will be, you know, even for both of them going into this, for Dukers and Alexander, where he went 9th and Dukers went 2nd. That's definitely going to make some challenges for him to keep up with. But I think we're going to see a race of it in the second run.
I agree, entirely agree. If he'd gone off right behind Martin Stuckers, they'd have been hundreds apart, not tenths.
Very, very good run.
Superb stuff. You know, what you want to do is kind of trickle down without too much drama like a stream.
Exactly. Here he is in the straightaway. Look how tight he is. Look how low his head is. We really have to focus on our aerodynamics, and he has it. Look how low his head is and his feet are together. That's what you want. And this is where you can gain some speed. That's a long straightaway where the wind is blowing by you. He has a nice early entrance into Kreisel.
Can you not Velcro your vest to keep your shoulders down on the sled?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Is that not allowed?
I don't know if it's allowed. I don't know if you'd get stuck or maybe you wouldn't be in the position that you'd want to be in. There's his speed. Look at the speed.
Wow, that's still 112, top speed down the bottom.
Yeah.
Not from our race leader. And you can see here Ed Smith with a bit of handy stitching on his vest. Celebrated his birthday on Thursday. Turned 34 years old. Possibly not, but he was roughing me up earlier, so I'll give him some tough times.
Now that left groove, you can choose as an athlete which groove you put your sled into. You can see there's a left groove, right? Ooh, that's going to cost him coming out curve 2. He chose to go in the left groove, and that groove is actually setting him up much better than that right groove has been for previous athletes.
Let's see how he gets down the track. 7100s back.
Into the labyrinth. Curve 9 coming out. Let's see where the straightaway leads him. He's drifting right. Every 100th of a second counts. When we're going in straightaways, we want to go straight from point A to point B. We don't want to have to crisscross or drift right or drift left, and that'll definitely cost you 100ths of a second.
Again, World Cup rookie season. He's raced on this track before, but not often. You have to have a big correction there as you get light over that brow.
And it's uphill. That's another problem. 1.3 seconds. That's not bad. 8th position, given the circumstances, given the weather, and you know he has a room to clean some things up. But when you're going uphill and you go sideways into a corner, that's really going to cost you on your speed.
Well, it is a downhill sport, but there are uphill sections in this track, as with so many others. So yeah, those you know, it's perverse that the slower you're going, the more important it is not to make mistakes.
Exactly. That's why the top is so critical. You see him putting his toes out there. This is corner 14. Coming into the straightaway, and you're going to see his sled just break away. His runners will not be straight. Right there. They're at an angle, and that will just kill your speed. You want to be, and he has to break form as well, so his aerodynamics is at cost too.
He looked good, didn't he, coming off the corner, and then he got up the brow, and it all went sideways.
Yes.
Head first Ed, follow him on Twitter.
Sometimes we doubt our own abilities, and it makes us, you know, put our foot out or turn our head a little bit, and that could really throw off our sled in the direction that it's going in.
Well, here is Ed's roomie, Dom Parsons, 25 years old. Born in London now, resides down near the University of Bath, where so much of the British sliding is based. And he's got a good sprinting style, and again, World Cup rookie this year.
1200s. Wow, that's a really, really good start.
5:21 is an electrifying getaway. Again, we have to take Martins Ducos out of the equation. A 5:09, no one's going to get close to that, but Dom with the second quickest start in the field.
And already down by 43 hundredths. I really think that this mist, I mean, you can't really see it, you know, for those viewers watching at home, but there's a light mist, and it's just constantly, you know, laying down on the track and slowing it down.
And it is frosting rather than lubricating the track as
he
well.
missed that second pressure. He missed it. Let's see. Came out quite nicely.
Got a little less speed than his teammates. He's gone from second at the start to 7th place at the moment. 9th spot. Can he stay in the top 10 in the final couple of corners?
Here comes the finish line right here. Easy to tap left, but that's fine.
9th place run. So the two Brits who started 11th and 12th in the running order are 8th and 9th, and Kristen Bromley in 6th position.
9th place and a second and a half behind. You'll see some tracks where there's only a half a second separating first to 20th, and here there's a second and a half separating first to 9th. That's a very, very large margin in the sport of skeleton. You can see him coming down the straightaway here. Keeps his form. He's not quite as close to that left wall as you wanted to be, but he didn't panic, and he kept it together. He was able to maintain his steers. Right here you see his toe coming down on the ice. Ooh, very high to that wood.
He hit the lip, didn't he?
He did, but he controlled it, and he didn't panic, and a lot of times that's what it's about. A lot of times it's about just keeping your head about you when everything else is falling apart, and he actually did a really good job coming out of that curve.
Well, he came onto the World Cup Tour in Europe after Dave Swift had done the North American legs, and having a good time here in Altenberg. Next up, Ben Sanford, a man who, perhaps more than almost any other in this field, is looking forward to getting to St. Moritz, the place where his 6'6" frame will be most able to extend itself. Let's hope he's healthy, fit, and fast there.
Yeah, he's a very tall athlete, the tallest on the circuit. I'm 5'10", and on the girls' side, I believe I'm the tallest as well on our side. This long start is very difficult for us being tall, just because it's hard to get your legs around you. You have to keep going. Let's see what his push time is here. Ooh, a difficult load. He came off to that side. You could see him trying to get on. 48 hundredths down.
Yeah. Again, everybody is 2/10 down on Martins Ducos when they load there. So he's still 2/10 down on the field.
Let's see what this next split brings. That was great. Great curve 4 into curve 5, 97 hundredths. So he's lost about half a second between those two timing eyes.
This has got advantages for him, and it's got lots of corners, and he does drive really well. The disadvantage, as you say, is that a really long start is just going to leave him almost gasping for pace.
Exactly, and it's so critical. I believe it's so much more critical here in Altenberg than maybe other tracks, just to have a faster start, especially in this weather. Nice exit of 14. He's maintaining 1.1, so he hasn't bled out much more time.
Good speed as well. He's now up to 8th position ahead of Dom Parsons.
That's a good finish, especially, I know we keep mentioning it, but given these track conditions where the track is definitely slowing down, and he was able to hold it together. We'll see if we see a smile or a frown.
Well, look at the folded arms. That tells you pretty much all you need to know. He's not fist pumping after that one. A few errors crept in, but predominantly, you know, as in the rain with your race yesterday, you will just feel that you're slow, and it's not.
I crossed the finish line. I crossed the finish line after my second run, and it was so bad. It was pouring out so much that I actually thought I had a really bad run. I shook my head, I pounded my fist, and then I found out I was still in first. So.
Oh.
Here's his long stride. You can see his legs just trying to get around. It's so hard, it's so long. Some of the starts that we have are very quick. We take maybe 10 to 12 steps, and here we're counting 18 to 20.
Yeah. 8th place run for Ben Sanford. You see him there getting weighed and measured, as everybody does. Next up, Kyle Tress of the USA. Kyle will be looking to try and get himself into the top 10 here. And again, what they've all got to hope is that the conditions don't change. So in the second heat, the later sliders, who'll be the leaders after the first heat, have even frostier ice.
Yes. Yeah, we saw that yesterday. Those that had finished not so well in the first heat, as the second heat approached, they had better runs on that second run, and the top people started having poorer runs.
Disappointing race for him last year. Kyle was only 22nd, didn't make the second cut. And there is that potential for drama here as well, with 23 starters. 3 will not make the second heat.
Over a second behind right now. Cutting across into that right. He tapped that right wall. That's going to cost him a little bit. He's down by a second and a half going into Kreisel. So you can see he has a pretty straight line. He's pretty clean, but for us, that's actually pretty slow. The more that you drive, especially in this weather, with the frost, with the wetness on the track, it's actually going to slow you down. You want to do the least amount possible, but keep yourself going as fast as possible. So you want to be on the verge of out of control, and he's very controlled today. Yeah, you can see at 2.6 seconds, too much control.
Big toe steers down into the Kreisel. He only had 105 kilometers an hour at the bottom of the track as well. He's 2.6 seconds back, so he replaces John Daly at the foot of the pile, and that means that both of our US sliders who've gone down so far are in danger potentially of not making Heat 2.
Yeah, you can see right here in Kreisel, see how low he is. Most of the athletes are getting close to hitting that wood. He's very low. That means he's driving his toe so hard that it's turning his sled in the middle of the pressure. And that's very, very slow. Some tracks you want to have a straight line as possible and throughout the curves, and you can see him just hanging on to that curve. He was just overdriving it, and I don't think he's going to be too happy, but he still gives us a wave, and yeah. he's just great. He's a great teammate.
Yeah. He was doing a little bit of Cresta run steering there. Next up is Maurizio Ioli of Italy. Well, last year, 18th spot in this race in Altenberg. 17 in the World Cup rankings so far this year.
He always has a smile on his face, always saying, ciao, close by.
He is a really bright and breezy character,
really
isn't he?
He's great.
Just keeping the sled moving a little with his toes, not allowing it to stick to the ice even momentarily.
He ran it really far, which is good. It should be good. 2700s.
That's a quick getaway, 5:36. That's not bad at all. 8th fastest start in the field.
He's fighting it. You can see his feet coming out, his head turning. That's hundredths of a second. Bleeding away. Not a bad entry into 5. A little bit of an early entrance. When we say early, it just means that you're a little too close to that wall when you're going into the next curve. We want to be as close to that wall without getting an abrupt change of motion. So we want to be as fluid as possible from one motion to the other. We want one curve should feel like it's flowing into the next.
105.6, 65 miles an hour, 63.5 on the exit. Not got great speed.
Right here, coming out of 14, there's a straightaway. If his runners are straight, they're fairly straight. You can see him kind of squiggling around, trying to force it, but it's much better than throwing your sled into a sideways, skid. 1.6. So he's in 12th right now. That's a decent position for him, actually. You can see Danny Licati, former skeleton athlete as well, now his coach. Gives a little smile and nod.
Well, look at the ice here now. In the centre of the track, it's really wet and highly polished. On the fringes, you can see it's really matte. There's no reflection off it. And when ice isn't reflecting, you know what it looks like in your deep freeze when you open the lid? Well, that's what it feels like here.
Here's 11 to 12. You can see him come up really high. It's really kind of tricky to get into that curve early, just from the high pressure in 11. That was actually curve 12. All right, you can see he's actually holding it together. It's his 13 going into 14, and this is a critical portion. He handled this very well. He can gain a lot of speed in those 2 curves.
He's got a lot of driving potential, definitely. One of the problems for the Italians, of course, is that they've now lost one of their 2 tracks, their main training track. Well, next up is Hiro Takahashi. And of course, although the Japanese do have a track in Japan from the Nagano Games of 1998, it's not even opened until after Christmas, so it's no use at all for pre-season training for them. So they, like most others, have to come to places like Norway that open nice and early in the season.
Over the Christmas break, they had their nationals, and he actually ended up winning it, so it was a great race for him. Pushing in the left groove and running on the left side. This groove has been a lot nicer than the other 2900s. It pushed him off nice and straight into curve 1. Great entry into curve 2. Here he is coming out 2, holds it straight. Early into 3 on that left wall, that's nice. Oh, a little bit of a flop, that's gonna cost him. You can see his toes coming down. He's really trying to crank it. And in this weather, as we were saying before, if you overdrive it, if you put your toes down too long, a little longer than you need to, that's just blowing away hundredths or tenths of a second, and you're gonna slow down your run.
17th in this race last year. At the moment, he's in 14th spot. He's only the 16th slider, so not going to be a big top 10 result for him.
Nice and straight, here we go, into curve 14. This is uphill right here. Nice and straight, that's great. I know he doesn't quite have that speed there, but whatever speed, oh, that was a little rough though. Whatever speed he did have coming out of 14 and going in that uphill, it helps you to maintain it. 2.47, wow. So he's in 15th position.
Katsuhiro Koshi, the veteran Japanese slider, and the voice of Noel Piker's Pace from the USA, sitting alongside me in the booth here. And we now have had 16 of our 23 sleds down.
Here he is coming in the straightaway, going into Kreisel. He taps that left wall and he's fighting it. He's trying so hard to stay in the left because he needs to hit that pressure. But sometimes it's not worth fighting it. Sometimes you just need to let your sled go and trust that it's going to go straight. Sometimes we throw ourselves into sideways. Right there, he goes in very, very late on that left-hand wall. We want it to be more on the right side for an easier pressure to be able to steer and to drive.
Talking to John Montgomery yesterday, we were saying about there's this great theory that if you strap 90 kilos to a sled and push it off the top, it'll find the best route down. And he said, yeah, but of course, you know, being men, we want to control everything, so we interfere with it, we drive it differently, and we ruin the ideal line.
Yes.
And we'll have to wait and see if anybody can actually run down this track like a 90-pound sack of potatoes.
When I was first learning how, that's how they said. They said, just be a sack of potatoes. Yeah. Just hold on and be a sack of potatoes. Don't do anything.
Do nothing. Yeah, your brain's going, do something! What about Raphael Meyer of Austria then? Let's see what this young man can do. Last year, 11th place. Altenberg, bizarrely for an Austrian from a gliders track like Eagles, was his single best result of the season.
Wow, yeah.
And you know, that's not going to work. He did better here in Altenberg than he did at home in Eagles.
Yeah, that typically doesn't happen. No. Usually your home track is going to be your bread and butter, and then, you know, other tracks you try and figure out along the way.
We'll have to wait and see what he does in Eagles, but with a 5.50 start, that's possibly the reason why he doesn't do so well on the gliders tracks. 106, decent speed into the Kreisel.
Great exit, and he's keeping his form together. 1.49, he's 43.30.
16th fastest start, he's already closed into 14th place.
108.6 for speed. Now that's not quite up there with the 112 that we've seen from Rommel or 110 from Dukers, but 1.79 in 13th position.
Well, he gets down inside the 61-second margin. We haven't seen that for a while. So
yeah, that's a good
finishes,
run.
Yeah, 13th spot. He's 100th of a second in front of Eric Nielsen, so the battle is on between them, because that's faster than the blink of an eye, a lot faster.
That is a lot faster. I've tried to blink. I've tried to see how many times I could blink in a second, and the most I could do was 7. I don't know. Viewers at home, let me know if you find anything different.
Yeah, if you can beat a 10th of a second in the blinking, you are really working hard. Martin Stukurs of Latvia is our race leader, from Alexander Krökel and Frank Rommel, with Christopher Groother right behind them, the junior world champion. Thomas Stukurs, Kristen Bromley, John Montgomery, then Ben Sanford, Ed Smith and Don Parsons rounding out the top 10. Noel Piker's Pace of the USA, alongside me, Martin Haven, here in the booth at the DKB Ice Canal. This track that was officially opened to international competition back in 1987. It was built in the run-up to the Cool Runnings Olympic Games in Calgary as a secret test track for the East German program. He's still regarded as one of the toughest drivers tracks in the business, Noel.
Yeah, there are points in the track where you can lose so much speed. There are points in the track typically when the weather is cooperating where you can flip onto your back. Curve 4, where he's going into right now, this is Curve 3 into Curve 4. Typically we see athletes flipping onto their backs right here. You can see him come out fairly nice and straight there, a little bit of a sideways skid. But there's so many places where you can get hurt and injured and hit walls, and this weather just isn't showing us those lines.
Matthias, I think now pretty much fully recovered from a back injury in pre-season training. He was on his way to the first training session with the Austrians, and he put his back out, closing his car door, and he's been struggling with that right up to the Christmas break. And as you know, when you're bent over and then lying on one of these things, if your back is killing, everything is killing. And
you can't relax. A major point in our sport is relaxation. I know it looks kind of crazy, head first on your stomach going up to 80, 90 miles an hour. It's very hard to relax, but that is one of the key factors. And when you're injured like that, it's very difficult to get in a comfortable position and be able to do your best.
The first thing that happens when you hurt your back is it tightens every muscle in your body, pretty much.
Yeah. Yes, everything.
Exactly, which is exactly the opposite for what you want. Janine Flock, the Austrian girl, down there helping out with the sleds as we watch Matthias at the start.
Here's the start, and it's so critical to gain as much speed as possible here. Every 100th that you're down at the top will cost you 200ths at the bottom. It's a gravity sport, and so the more momentum that you have to begin with, the more it's going to carry you through.
Not looking at all happy with that run. Too many mistakes creeping in, and again, I'm sure he was feeling the frostiness in the track. You know, when your hand sticks to the side of your ice box in your refrigerator, that's exactly what happens with the runners here. Just doesn't peel your skin off so easily. Next up, Anton Batyuev. Now, we last saw him in the World Championships in Lake Placid. He's been only a very occasional World Cup performer. The reason he's here is that some of the top Russians are away training in Eagles, building up for the European and World Championships.
Yeah, the Russians have really built their program on sprinters. They have some very quick sprinters, which help with getting down the track, and I think they figure, you know, get some fast sprinters and we'll teach them how to slide. Oftentimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a mixed pot. You're never quite sure what you're going to get. First of all, you've got to convince a sprinter that going 90 miles an hour with a chin on the ice is a good idea. But that goes two ways, right? After your first slide, either I've got to get right back on and try that again, or you run screaming for the hills, or preferably away from the hills.
I was ready to get right back on and do it again.
Well, I think, you know, everybody we talk to in this sport is in the former camp. There must be so many that just ran away.
Nice exit out of Kreisel. Oh, a little bit of a bump, and he actually hit. He controlled it really well within Kreisel. He just missed steering that last pressure.
Former luge slider, started that sport in 2005, then crossed over into the skeleton program.
Yeah, we see that happen a lot within skeleton, whether you go from bobsled to skeleton or luge to skeleton. I really think it helps an athlete to have been a part of one of those other sports, just because you can see the ice, you know how it's going to react, and you're able to put it into play going head first. And skeleton sled, you can't steer as easily as you can maybe a bobsled or a luge sled. So you really need to be able to relax and put yourself where you need to go.
But of course, the other thing is that luge, particularly on most European tracks, is available from like 6 years old, and so you can get a feel for the ice almost at the age at which you start skiing.
Yeah, whereas in skeleton it's about 14 years old. It's too hard to keep your head up. You can see him. There he goes. He hits that left wall, which will send him into that right wall. That's going to cost him speed. But if we start younger within skeleton, it's too hard for them to keep up their heads, and so they can start with luge. They have clips that they can hook to from their chin to their chest, and bobsled you can start maybe 12 or 14. Okay, here's Brad Stewart.
Indeed, Brad Stewart, a World Cup debutant, 33-year-old from Park City, Utah. And he is married to Kimber Gabrisak. And in fact, although he was working at the Olympic Park at Park City, he only took up sliding after he started dating Kimber and said, hey, you know, he was a tour guide there, and he thought, you know, I'll give it a go so I can talk with a little bit more knowledge and experience. Well, look where that led him. He's in a World Cup race now.
Yeah, he's really improved his start. He's gotten a lot stronger over this summer, particularly. He came out and tapped that left wall. That's going to cost him a little bit. He's holding it together really well. But he's a lot stronger, a lot faster. He's in great shape right now. Both Kimber and him, they make a great team. You know, they're helping each other out, helping each other with lines and equipment. It's really fun to see them at the track together.
Well, that's pretty much their backyard, right? They live, what, a 6-minute drive from the track?
Very close to Park City, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coming out, runner straight, drifting a little but not panicking. That's good. Letting it run a little bit, that's nice.
This is first time ever on this Altenberg track, so, you know, I guess he's got to put himself into that Lake Placid frame of mind where steering is not necessarily your enemy.
Yeah, and he hasn't had very many runs here. I mean, he only had 4 runs this week. So to be able to come out here and put it down and race, and to, you know, come out with 2, you know, he's in 18th position with 4 runs. That's great for Brad, and for these race conditions, that's great. 0.09
of a second behind the top American slider John Daly after the first heat, and ahead of his teammate Kyle Tress, who remains in 20th place and definitely on the bubble. So yeah, Brad Stewart, welcome to the World Cup, and good job.
Yeah, coming out of curve 12, he tapped that right wall. That's going to cost him a few hundredths at least right there. Here he comes a little bit high, and you'll see the space between his body. He kept it down, though. You could see him trying to pin it down so that his body didn't separate from his sled. He's holding on tight. There's a smile and a wave.
We have a little biography, as you know, when athletes come in for their headshots, you know, they said, "Oh, come, Brad, you didn't even put your favorite book down." He said, "No, Kimber reads the books in our house." Next up is Alexander Mutovin of Russia. Now, he is a newcomer to the World Cup, so we've had 2 debutants in succession. So first ever steps onto the ice as a World Cup slider. Of course, this is the ultimate goal, is to get into the World Cup team. You start in the Europa Cup or the North American Cup, then there's the second tier of sliding, the Intercontinental Cup, and then the big show.
Yeah, this is really where everybody wants to be. I mean, this is where the Olympic teams are made, you know, competing on the World Cup. These are the best athletes in the world, so this is what everybody is vying for, is to get onto this circuit.
5.30, you could see from the leg turnover where he came from. He's got to have a sprint background somewhere. 7th quickest starter.
Ooh, that's going to cost him. Yeah, he came out too early into curve 5 and hit that left wall. You'll see his speed just bleed away.
Well, again, for a relatively inexperienced slider, you know, for the conditions to be frosty now, quite different from training. He's steering the same as he was expecting to, but it's having more effect.
Yeah, this is very different than we've had for training. Besides the day before the race, or 2 days ago, it's very different. We had hard ice. The rain wasn't here. It was nice and cold outside. And then to come here and to be expecting it to be the same, you're driving really hard because the ice was harder. Now it's soft. You don't want to be driving as much, and so your steers are going to be off, your timing's going to be off. In this, it's a sport of timing and rhythm, and that really throws it off when the weather conditions aren't cooperating.
That is a 60.91 slide, leaves him in 16th position, so the World Cup rookie will make the second heat, and Kyle Tress will not. He has been bumped, and Hiro Takahashi of Japan is now the man on the bubble with 2 sleds to come. Brad Stewart, 19th, is not yet safe.
Here he is coming out of curve 4 into 5. Too early. He lets his foot come out. His other foot is dragging on the ice. Anytime anything is touching on the ice, that's costing you speed. And if your sled gets in too early, it knocks you down. That's going to cost you speed as well, because it makes you enter in a little later than you wanted to for the next pressure, which is going to rise you up really high, and it's going to set you up for a poor entry into the next curve. Every curve builds on each other, and if you do one curve poorly, it's going to build to the next curve, and the next curve's going to not be so well, and it all just trickles down the track.
Well, let's see if we can get some trickling down the track from Greece's Alexandros Kefalas. He starts 22nd spot here, and this is his rookie World Cup season. So didn't compete in this World Cup race last year. Now he lives in Switzerland, born and bred of Swiss mother and Greek father, which is where he gets his sliding nationality from.
5:40 start, 0.3 down, and comes out and hits that left wall. Now, I mean, you have a fight, you know, you have that kind of push, and then you come out and you hit the wall. Up top, that's going to cost you. It's so much worse to hit a corner or hit a wall up top than it would be down in the bottom when you have that speed. The slower you're going, the less mistakes you want to make. Hopefully you're not making any mistakes.
Well, at the moment, off a 15th best start, despite that little hiccup at the start, he is still in the race. But as he gets to the Kreisel, he's drifted out to 21st place, 104.1.
He really overdrove that. You could see he was trying to take those pressures away. You see us rise and fall in those corners, and in that curve, that specific corner, you want to allow it to rise and fall, and he really made a straight line out of it, and that'll cost you on your speed. Coming into the finish curve right here. And there's the finish line. 2.7 in 22nd spot.
22nd spot, so he will not make the cut.
Brad Stewart.
Yeah.
Brad Stewart will make it.
Brad Stewart will, yes, you're right. He had 1 to go. Hiro Takahashi is in 20th place. Now, the last race in the plan, for the first time in his World Cup career, he did bust into the top 20 and get that second heat. So that was a really big mental step for him. Here, though, just too many errors up top, really, that hampered his run.
Yeah, curve 4 to 5, hitting after curve 1. That is about the worst thing you can do in the sport of skeleton is hit anywhere near the top. Here he is coming out of Kreisel. He actually handled it fairly well, but as I said before, he was just overdriving it. And in these soft conditions, earlier in the week, that would have been a perfect line. You know, coming out, you want to drive it fairly hard. His head is high, his feet are apart. Looked a little bit sloppy.
Bit of balalaika music down the bottom for the Russians. Some bouzouki for the Greek. Although, frankly, he could as well be an umpire band because he was born and bred in Switzerland. So Alexandros Kefalas does not get a second heat. What about Romania's Silviu Mesarosi? We'll see whether he can bust into the top 20 for the first time this season. Still very young, 23 years old. Last year was his World Cup rookie season.
You see, that's kind of a hard load. You want to load as straight as possible to avoid making your sled come out of that groove so you can stay straight. He did the same thing, hit that left wall going into curve 2, and now he's sliding sideways.
Well, he was 25th in the field of 26 sliders here last year. Let's see if he can pick up a spot.
He has very good form. His feet are together, his head is low. That's one of the first things that you really need to focus on as a skeleton athlete is working on your aerodynamics. Make sure that that head is low. You can see him kind of looking up, trying to take a peek of the next corner coming up, seeing where he's at.
His real problem is the start. 5:58 was the slowest start, left him half a second down on the race leader as he loaded.
That's very difficult to make up for. If you have a slow start, he almost, that was very, very bad exit of corner 14, and especially when you're going into that uphill portion.
Nearly spat him off, but he maintains his position on the sled to the line. 23rd place, though, and that's probably a run that he will best forget.
Yeah, coming out early, that's been a problem for most athletes all week during training, and hitting that left wall as we saw him do. But with this weather condition, it hasn't been near as drastic as that. You'll see him coming here. That's 13, going into 14. He holds it very well, getting a little too high there. So it sends him out early. His right bunk, his runner, just comes up, and he's not able to maintain it. He was trying to keep his form, and he couldn't hold it.
Of course, that shows the way that you lie on the sled with your shoulders in front and your hands down by your hips, just the thumbs grabbing onto the saddle to try and hold you onto your sled. So when you get flung sideways, boy, you better have strong thumbs.
A lot of it comes down to experience, because I know when other athletes come out to this, you're able to drop a toe or something. Here's his push. This is where it really killed him, just being so far behind at the start.
Well, this is the
Duker's
fastest push.
Yes,
this is Martin Stuker's, a 5:09 start. That in itself put him 2/10 clear of the field, and he leads by a quarter of a second, but
holds his form. No matter what happens, he holds his form. You can see the speed. You can see it coming out of each corner.
Well, he had potentially the least worst conditions coming second out of the starting shed. Let's see what the weather holds in store for Heat 2. Martin Stuker's leads by a quarter of a second. Germans second, third and fourth. They swept the podium in this morning's two-man bobsleigh race. Can they somehow unseat Martin Stuker's and clean up here? It seems unlikely, but on this track, in these conditions, who can possibly tell? Well, join Noel Piker-Space and me, Martin Haven, for the second heat here at the DKB Ice Canal in Altenberg. Can Stuker go for his third straight run? His first win in 2013. He's got the advantage he needs. Only time will tell us if he can hold on. And don't forget, you can join us live on the FIBT.com website for every race the whole season long.